The wreckage and the rescue. The stars were cold and silent in the Kethrani disputed zone, and Commander Marcus Cole knew that nothing good ever came from this part of space. Pirates hunted here, raiders hid among the asteroid fields, and smart captains avoided it entirely. But Marcus had never been accused of being smart when there was salvage to be found his ship. The Wandering Hope was a beaten-up freighter that had seen better days about 20 years ago. The hull was patched in 11 places. The engines made sounds that no engine should make, and the life support system had a habit of playing old Earth music at random times. But she was his, bought with 15 years of hard work and harder choices. "Captain, I am picking up something strange," John called from the pilot's seat, his fingers dancing across the console. He was a small man with quick eyes and quicker reflexes, and he had been flying with Marcus for 6 years. Now Marcus walked over and looked at the screen. Among the floating debris of what looked like a destroyed convoy, there was a faint signal pulsing a distress beacon, weak but steady. That convoy was hit maybe 2 days ago, Dr. Okonkwo said from behind them. She was the ship's medic, a tall woman with kind eyes and gray hair she kept tied back. Anyone alive in there would be running out of time. "Yusuf," the engineer, shook his head as he looked at the readings. "Captain, that debris field is huge. We go in there, we might not come out. Could be pirates waiting for exactly this, someone stupid enough to investigate." Marcus stared at the blinking signal. Yusuf was right. This was probably a trap. Any sensible person would turn around and forget they ever saw it, but that beacon was still pulsing. And somewhere in that wreckage, someone was still hoping. "Take us in," Marcus said. "Captain," Yusuf started. "I heard you," Marcus said, his voice firm but not angry. "Take us in anyway." Jiang sighed but turned the ship toward the debris. They moved slowly, carefully, weaving between the torn metal and shattered hulls of what had once been beautiful ships. Marcus counted at least 7 destroyed vessels, all of them far more advanced than anything humans built. "These are Volanti ships," Dr. Okonkwo whispered, and there was fear in her voice now. "Volanti." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The Volanti Imperium was one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, and they had made it very clear what they thought of humans. 3 times they had blocked humanity from joining the Galactic Concord. They had imposed trade restrictions, denied diplomatic meetings, and once blockaded an entire human colony over a misunderstanding about mining rights to the Volanti. Humans were primitives, aggressive, emotional, barely evolved apes who had somehow stumbled into space travel. They tolerated humanity the way someone might tolerate a loud neighbor, with cold patience and obvious disdain. "The beacon is coming from that escape pod," Jiang said, pointing to a small oval shape spinning slowly among the wreckage. It bore the royal insignia of the Volanti Imperium, a silver star surrounded by 7 moons royal. "This was a royal escape pod. We should leave," Yusuf said immediately. "Whatever happened here is Volanti business. We get involved, we make enemies. We already have enough enemies." Marcus looked at the pod. The beacon was getting weaker. Whoever was inside was dying. "If we leave, they die," Marcus said simply. "Captain, they are Volanti," Yusuf pressed. "They would not save us." "You know they would not." "I know," Marcus said. "But I am not Volanti." He turned to Jiang. "Bring us alongside. Yusuf, prepare the docking clamps. Doc, get the medical bay ready for whatever we find." Nobody argued further. They had all served with Marcus long enough to know when. His mind was made up. The docking procedure was tense. Every moment. Marcus expected weapons to appear from the debris, pirates revealing their trap, but nothing came. There was only silence and the slow drift of broken ships. When the airlock opened, Marcus went in first. The escape pod was dark, the emergency lights flickering red. The air was thin and stale. almost gone. And there, strapped into the survival seat, was a young Volanti woman. She was beautiful in the way all Volanti were beautiful, tall, and slender, with skin like pale silver and hair that seemed to glow faintly blue. But she was also covered in blood, her elaborate robes torn, and her breathing was so shallow that Marcus thought at first she was already dead. Then her eyes fluttered, just barely, and he saw the fear in them, the fear of someone who had accepted death and was terrified to find it had not come yet. "It is okay," Marcus said softly, kneeling beside her and carefully releasing the straps. "I have got you. You are going to be okay." He lifted her in his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and he could feel how cold she was, how close to the end. He carried her through the airlock, through the corridors of his battered ship, and into the medical bay where Dr. Okonkwo was waiting. "Oh my," the doctor breathed when she saw the patient. "This is Captain. Do you know who this is?" Marcus looked at the unconscious woman as doctor. Okonkwo began working. "No, she is wearing the pendant of the third moon," the doctor said, her hands moving quickly, attaching monitors and preparing treatments. "This is Princess Salith Vorana, third daughter of Empress Kithara. She's one of the most important people in the entire Volanti Imperium." Marcus stood there, looking at the pale face of the princess, and he felt the weight of what he had just done settle onto his shoulders. He had not just rescued a Volanti, he had rescued royalty, a kind of royalty that could start wars or end them. "Can you save her?" he asked. The Okonkwo did not look up. "I will do everything I can, for 11 days. Marcus barely left the medical bay. He sat in a chair beside the recovery pod, watching the monitors, watching the slow rise and fall of the princess's chest. His crew took turns bringing him food he barely ate and coffee he drank by the gallon. He talked to her, even though she could not hear him. He told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and the green forests and the way the rain sounded on a metal roof. He told her about thunderstorms and sunsets and the songs humans sang when they were sad. He did not know why he talked. Maybe he just needed her to know that someone was there, that she was not alone in the dark. On the 11th day, her eyes opened. They were silver, bright, and clear, and they looked at him with confusion and wonder and a fear that slowly faded as she realized she was safe. Marcus leaned forward, exhaustion written across his face, and he smiled. "Welcome back, Your Highness," he said. "You gave us quite a scare." The princess stared at him, at this strange, soft-skinned creature with tired eyes and a gentle voice, and she said the first words she had spoken in 11 days. "You are human." She whispered. "Yes," Marcus said, "and you are alive." "Let us focus on the good news." Something changed in her eyes then. Something shifted. And though neither of them knew it yet, the galaxy had just begun to change with it. The journey home. Princess Salith Vorana had been taught many things about humans. She had been taught that they were violent and unpredictable, driven by emotions they could not control. She had been taught that they were primitive, their civilization barely 10,000 years old compared to the Volanti's 40,000. She had been taught that human touch was contaminating, their presence uncomfortable, their entire species best kept at a distance. Nobody had taught her that humans could be kind. The journey to Volanti Prime would take 3 weeks through some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. Marcus had explained this to her on her second day awake, his voice calm and steady as he laid out the route on a holographic map. There were pirate territories to avoid, unstable jump points to navigate, and something else, something he hesitated to tell her. "Your convoy was not attacked by pirates," he finally said, his eyes meeting hers with uncomfortable honesty. "The weapons signatures we found in the debris, they were Volanti military. Someone from your own Imperium tried to kill you." Salith had suspected this, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way she had not been ready for. She was third in line to the throne, And there were factions within the Imperium who wanted different futures, different rulers. She had always known that danger existed, but she had never imagined her own people would actually— "Hey," Marcus said softly, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. "You are safe here. We will get you home. I promise." She looked at him, this strange human with his rough hands and tired eyes, and she believed him. She did not understand why, but she believed him. The days that followed were unlike anything Salith had ever experienced. The Wandering Hope was small and cramped, and nothing like the elegant ship she was used to. The food was simple, the accommodations basic. And there was no protocol, no formality, no carefully maintained distance between classes. The crew treated her like a person, Jiang. The pilot showed her pictures of his twin daughters back on a human colony world. They were small and round-faced and smiled with missing teeth, and he talked about them with such love that Selith felt something twist in her chest. Valanthi did not speak of their children this way. With open emotion and unguarded joy, Dr. Okonkwo changed her bandages every day and hummed old songs while she worked. The songs were sad and beautiful, about loss and hope and carrying on despite everything. When Salith asked about them, the doctor smiled and said they were spirituals, songs her ancestors had sung during dark times to remind themselves that morning always came. Yusuf taught her to play chess. He was gruff at first, clearly uncomfortable with having Valanthi royalty on board, but he thawed as the games went on. When she lost her third game in a row, he laughed, actually laughed, and she found herself laughing too, something she had not done in longer than she could remember. And Marcus was everywhere. He checked on her constantly, brought her meals, sat with her when the nightmares came. Because the nightmares did come every night. The explosion, the screams, the faces of her guards as they died protecting her. She would wake gasping, reaching for something to hold on to. And somehow Marcus was always there. "It gets easier," he told her one night, sitting on the floor beside her bed because there were not enough chairs on this tiny ship. "The dreams, they do not go away, but they get quieter. I promise." "How do you know?" she asked. He was silent for a moment. "Because I have them too." She did not ask what his dreams were about. She did not need to. She could see the weight of old pain in his eyes, the same weight she now carried on the 8th day. The raiders found them. They came out of a debris cloud near the hollow stars. 3 fast attack ships with weapons already charging. Marcus was on the bridge immediately, shouting orders. His whole body transformed from the gentle caretaker she had come to know into something harder, sharper. "Jiang, evasive pattern delta. Yusuf, divert all power to shields. Doc, secure the princess in the—" "No," Salith said, stepping onto the bridge despite Dr. Okonkwo's protests. "I will not hide. If they have come for me, I should be here." Marcus turned to argue, but there was no time. The first shots hit their shields, and the ship shuddered, alarm screaming. Jiang flew like a man possessed, spinning and diving through the asteroid field while the raiders pursued. They were outgunned and outmatched. Salith knew this. She could see it in the way Marcus gripped the armrest of his chair, in the grim set of Yusuf's jaw as he watched the shield levels drop. These humans were going to die because of her. "There," Jiang shouted, pointing to a narrow gap between 2 massive asteroids. "If I can make it through there, we can lose them in the magnetic interference." "The gap is too small," Yusuf said. "We will never fit. We will fit," Marcus said. "Do it." The ship plunged toward the gap. Behind them, the raiders opened fire again. Salith saw the plasma bolt coming, saw that it was going to hit the bridge, saw that she was standing directly in its path, and then Marcus was in front of her. He grabbed her and spun, putting his body between her and the blast. The shot hit the hull beside them rather than dead center, but the shrapnel sprayed across his shoulder and back, and he grunted in pain but did not let go. They made it through the gap. The raiders, too large to follow, peeled off and disappeared into the darkness. They were safe. Selith knelt beside Marcus as Dr. Okonkwo rushed to treat his wounds. His shoulder was torn and bleeding, his face pale with shock and pain. But he was looking at her, checking if she was hurt. "Are you okay?" he asked. She stared at him in disbelief. You took that blast from me." "Why?" He managed a weak smile. "Because you were behind me." She did not understand. This made no sense. He was human. She was Volanthi. Their peoples were not allies, not friends, barely even acquaintances. Why would he risk his life for her? "I do not understand you," she whispered. "That is okay," Marcus said as the doctor injected him with painkillers and his eyes began to drift closed. Most people do not. In the days that followed, as his wound healed and the ship limped toward Volanthi space, Selith found herself watching the crew with new eyes. They laughed and argued and worried and hoped, all of it open and visible and completely unguarded. They were messy and emotional, and everything she had been taught to disdain. They were also the warmest people she had ever known when an Imperial escort finally intercepted them at the edge of Volanthi space. Selith stood at the airlock and refused to board the elegant cruiser that had come to take her home. "I will not leave until you give me your word," she said to Marcus. "You will come to the throne world. You will let me repay what I owe you." "You do not owe me anything," he said. "I owe you my life," she replied. "And more than that. I owe you something I did not know I was missing. Please, come." Marcus looked at her, at this alien princess who had somehow become something like a friend, and he sighed. "All right," he said. "But I am not bowing." She smiled, and it was the most genuine smile she had given in years. "We will see about that." The throne world, the Volanthi throne world, was called Ethoria, and Marcus had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying in his entire life. The planet hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered in crystalline structures that caught the light of 3 suns and scattered it into rainbows. Cities floated on clouds of anti-gravity fields, connected by bridges that looked like strands of spider silk. Everything was elegant, ancient, and absolutely perfect. The Wandering Hope looked like a dirty rock beside the Volanthi ships that escorted them to the surface. Marcus could feel the judgment radiating from every polished hull, every gleaming weapon array. His ship was an embarrassment, and he was worse. He had tried to clean up. He had borrowed clothes from Jang that almost fit, shaved his rough beard, and even attempted to learn some Volanthi greeting phrases. But standing in the transport pod, descending toward the Imperial Palace, he felt like a child playing dress-up. "You look fine," Selith said, standing beside him in robes that probably cost more than his entire ship. She had been transformed during the journey on the escort cruiser, returned to her proper status as princess. But her eyes were still the same warm, with something that might have been friendship. "I look like a salvage captain who wandered into the wrong party," Marcus replied. "You look like the man who saved my life," she said. "That is all that matters." Marcus wished he could believe her. Imperial Palace was beyond anything human architecture had ever attempted. It rose from the crystal plains like a mountain made of light, its spires reaching so high they seemed to touch the stars themselves. Guards in ceremonial armor lined the entrance, their faces hidden behind masks of polished silver, their weapons ancient and deadly. No human had ever been permitted inside these walls. Marcus was the first. The corridors were vast and silent, designed to make visitors feel small, insignificant, temporary. Marcus walked with his head high anyway. He had not come this far to be intimidated by fancy hallways. They passed through chamber after chamber, each more magnificent than the last, until finally they reached the throne room of stars. It was enormous. The ceiling was somehow transparent to space itself, showing the endless field of stars above. The walls were lined with thousands of Volanti nobles and officials, all dressed in elaborate robes, all staring at Marcus with expressions that ranged from cold curiosity to open disgust. Floating platforms held more observers, layer upon layer of the Imperium's most powerful people, all gathered to witness this unprecedented event, a human in the throne room. It was obscene. It was unthinkable. It was happening anyway, at the far end of the chamber. Upon a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, sat Empress Kitharesh was ancient, older than any human could live, but her age showed only in the weight of her presence, the gravity that seemed to bend around her. Her hair was silver white, her eyes were the color of deep space, and her face was perfectly, terrifyingly still. She looked at Marcus the way a mountain might look at a particularly interesting insect. Beside her stood advisors and ministers, already preparing their responses. Their careful diplomatic phrases designed to reward the human just enough to satisfy honor while making clear he was not welcome. Marcus could see it in their eyes. The practiced dismissal, the polite contempt approach. The Empress commanded, and her voice filled the chamber without seeming to rise at all. Marcus walked forward. His boots echoed on the crystal floor, each step impossibly loud in the silence. He felt 10,000 eyes on him, felt the weight of 40,000 years of tradition pressing down like a physical force. Every instinct screamed at him to bow, to kneel, to make himself small. He stopped at the designated spot, a circle of gold embedded in the floor. 10 meters from the throne, and he stood straight. He did not bow. A murmur rippled through the court. Scandalized whispers from beings who had never seen such disrespect. The guards tensed. The advisors exchanged glances. Even Salith, watching from the side of the chamber, held her breath. The Empress did not react. Her face remained perfectly still as she studied this strange creature before her. "You are the human called Marcus Cole," she said. "It was not a question. I am," Marcus replied, and his voice came out steadier than he felt. "You found the wreckage of my daughter's convoy in the Kethrani disputed zone. You retrieved her escape pod and provided medical care. You transported her through hostile space and delivered her to Imperial custody. These facts have been verified." "They have. You also engaged in combat with Volanti vessels during this transport," the Empress continued, and her voice grew colder. "You destroyed one raider ship and damaged 2 others. You killed Volanti citizens. I killed people who were trying to murder your daughter," Marcus said. "If that was wrong, I will not apologize for it." Another murmur, louder this time. Someone actually gasped. Marcus did not care. He was tired of walking on eggshells around people who had treated his entire species like dirt. "Bold words," the Empress said. "Perhaps too bold. You stand in the heart of the Volanti Imperium, human, surrounded by those who could end your existence with a thought. And yet, you show no fear, no deference. Some would call this courage. Others would call it stupidity. Your Majesty." One of the advisors stepped forward, a tall Volanti with robes covered in medals and symbols of rank. "If I may, this human has performed this service, yes, but let us not exaggerate its significance. The princess would surely have been rescued by Imperial forces. This human simply arrived first. He deserves a reward, certainly, but there is no need for silence," the Empress said. And the advisor went pale and retreated. She returned her gaze to Marcus. "I asked you a question, human, though perhaps you did not recognize it. Why do you show no fear? Why do you stand before the most powerful throne in the galaxy as though you belong here?" Marcus looked at her, at this ancient being who held the fate of millions in her hands, and he thought about all the reasons he should be afraid. She could have him killed with a word. She could have his ship destroyed, his crew arrested, his entire species punished for his insolence. But he also thought about Salith, bleeding and broken in that escape pod. He thought about the 11 days he had spent at her bedside. He thought about the plasma bolt that had torn through his shoulder because he would not let it reach her. "I do not fear you, Your Majesty," he said quietly, "because I did not come here for power or reward. I came because your daughter asked me to. I came because she is my friend, and I have learned that friendship is worth more than fear." The silence that followed was absolute. The Empress stared at him for a long moment, her ancient eyes unreadable. "Interesting," she finally said. "A human who speaks of friendship with Volanthi royalty. Many would call this presumption of the highest order." "Many would be wrong," Marcus said. "Would they?" The Empress asked. "Tell me then, human, why should I believe that your motives are pure? Why should I believe this was anything more than an attempt to gain favor, to insert yourself into imperial affairs for your own benefit?" Before Marcus could answer, a voice rang out from the side of the chamber, young and clear and absolutely forbidden to speak. "Because I can tell you, Mother, I can tell you exactly why he saved me." Princess Salith stepped forward, and the entire court turned to stare. She was breaking every rule of protocol. She was risking everything, and she did not seem to care. "He saved me. Mom, the throne room of stars had witnessed many things in its 40,000 years of existence. It had seen the rise and fall of dynasties, the declaration of wars that spanned galaxies, the signing of treaties that shaped the fate of billions. It had seen triumphs and tragedies, moments of glory and moments of shame. It had never seen what was happening now. Princess Salith Vorana was walking toward the throne, past the golden circle where visitors were required to stop, past the invisible line that separated the common from the royal. Every step she took was a violation of protocol so severe that the court seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. The guards moved to intercept her, but the Empress raised one hand and they froze in place. Kithara watched her daughter approach with an expression that was impossible to read. Was it anger? Concern? Something else entirely? "Salith," the Empress said, and there was a warning in her voice. "You forget yourself. Return to your place." "No," Salith said, and her voice did not waver. "I will not be silent. I will not stand aside while you decide whether to reward the man who saved my life or punish him for not bowing properly." A collective intake of breath from the court. This was unprecedented. A princess openly defying the Empress in front of the entire assembly. Heads would roll. Careers would end. The scandal would be discussed for centuries. "You test my patience, daughter," the Empress said. "And you test my conscience, Mother," Salith replied. She had reached the base of the throne now, looking up at the ancient figure who ruled them all. "I have been silent my whole life. I have followed protocol and tradition and done everything that was expected of me. I watched and listened and never spoke out of turn. But I cannot be silent now. I will not." She turned to face the court, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that he recognized, the same stubborn determination he had seen in his own crew. The same refusal to back down when something important was at stake. "You want to know why this human saved me?" she said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "You want to understand his motives? Then listen. Listen to what I have seen." She began to walk among the nobles, meeting their eyes one by one, forcing them to look at her rather than away. "When my convoy was destroyed, when my guards died protecting me, when I was alone and bleeding in an escape pod with hours left to live, no Volanthi came. The Imperium did not find me. Our glorious navy with all its ships and all its technology did not reach me in time." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "A human found me. A human with a ship held together by hope and stubbornness. A human who had every reason to leave me there because our peoples have treated each other with nothing but contempt. He found me, and do you know what he did?" She stopped in the center of the chamber, turning slowly to address the entire assembly. "He carried me in his arms. This human, This species we have called primitive and unworthy. He carried me to his ship, and he stayed by my side for 11 days. He talked to me while I slept. He told me about his world, about oceans and rain and songs that humans sing when they are sad. He was a stranger, and he treated me with more kindness than I have known from my own court. Murmurs began to ripple through the assembly. Confused and uncomfortable, when raiders came to kill me, Volanti raiders, our own people, his crew fought for me. They risked their lives for someone they had never met, someone from a species that has done nothing but insult them. And when a plasma bolt was about to strike me down, this human, she pointed at Marcus, threw himself in front of it. He took the blast that should have killed me. He bled for me. She walked back toward the throne, back toward her mother, and her voice dropped lower, more intimate, but still audible throughout the chamber. I asked him why. I asked him why he would risk everything for a Volanti princess when our peoples are not allies, not friends, barely even acquaintances. Do you know what he said? She was at the foot of the throne now, looking up at the Empress. He said, "Because you were behind me." The silence in the chamber was absolute. That is what humans are, Saleth continued, and her voice began to crack with emotion she had held back for too long. They do not calculate. They do not weigh political advantage. They see someone dying in the darkness, and they reach out. They find strangers in the void and refuse to let them face it alone. We have called them primitive because they feel so much, because they cannot hide their emotions behind perfect masks like we do. But I have learned that their feelings are not weakness. Tears were forming in her silver eyes now, something Volanti never showed in public, something that would have been humiliating just weeks ago. Their feelings are their greatest strength. She turned to face her mother directly. And when she spoke again, her voice was no longer that of a princess addressing her empress. It was something far more simple, far more powerful. He saved me. Mom, the word hung in the air, that small private word that belonged to childhood. The bedtime stories and scraped knees and nightmares chased away by a mother's presence. It was a word never spoken in court, never heard in these halls of power and tradition. He saved me when our own people tried to kill me. He saved me when the Imperium could not reach me. He saved me and asked for nothing in return. The tears were falling freely now, and Saleth did not wipe them away. For 40,000 years we have built this empire on tradition and protocol and the belief that we are superior to all other species. We have looked down on humans for their emotions, their chaos, their stubborn refusal to be proper and dignified. But Mom, Mother, Your Majesty, whoever you need to be right now, I am telling you that this human showed me something we have forgotten. She reached out and took her mother's hand. Another violation, another broken rule, and held it tightly. He showed me that kindness does not need a reason, that compassion is not primitive, that the measure of a person is not how well they hide their heart, but how willing they are to offer it to strangers. She looked at Marcus, standing alone in the golden circle, facing an empire that had every reason to dismiss him. He brought me home. He is not an intruder or a curiosity or a problem to be managed. He's my friend, and I do not care if the entire Imperium thinks that is improper. I do not care if it violates protocol. I do not care if it shamus our house. She turned back to her mother, and her voice steadied into something fierce and certain. He is my friend, and he deserves better than polite dismissal and token rewards. He deserves to be seen for what he is. The Empress looked at her daughter, at the tears on her face, the fire in her eyes, the hand gripping her own, and for the first time in centuries, her perfect composure wavered. "And what is he, my daughter?" she asked quietly. "What do you see when you look at this human?" Saleth smiled through her tears. "I see hope," she said. "I see the future. I see proof that the galaxy is bigger than our traditions and older than our fears. I see a man who looked at someone different and saw someone worth saving." She squeezed her mother's hand. I see what we could be, if we were brave enough to change. What humans are Empress Kithra had ruled the Volanthi Imperium for 9,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall, watched stars be born and die, guided her people through wars and plagues and crises that would have destroyed lesser civilizations. She had made hard choices and lived with their consequences. She had buried children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, watched generations pass while she remained in all that time. She had never wept in public. She had never shown weakness before her court. She had never allowed herself to be anything other than the perfect, eternal ruler that her people needed. But her daughter was standing before her with tears on her face and defiance in her heart. And Kithra found herself remembering something she had almost forgotten, what it felt like to be a mother 11 days. For 11 days, she had believed Salith was dead. For 11 days, she had worn her mask of perfect composure while something inside her crumbled to dust. She had attended meetings and issued decrees and behaved exactly as an empress should, because that was what her people expected, what tradition demanded. But alone in her chambers at night, she had wept. She had raged. She had cursed the universe for taking another child from her, and then Salith had returned, alive against all odds. Saved by someone who should have been her enemy. Kithra looked at the human standing in the golden circle. He was small by Volanthi standards, plain and unremarkable, dressed in borrowed clothes that did not fit properly. He looked tired and uncomfortable and completely out of place in this chamber of ancient power, but his eyes were steady. His spine was straight. And when he had spoken of friendship, there had been no calculation in his voice, no hidden agenda. He had simply stated a truth as he understood it. The court was waiting, thousands of eyes watching to see what the Empress would do. The advisors were ready with their careful suggestions, their diplomatic solutions that would satisfy honor without changing anything. Everything was prepared for business as usual. Kithra thought about 40,000 years of tradition. She thought about the protocols and ceremonies that had sustained her people for millennia. She thought about everything she had been taught, everything she had believed, everything she had enforced. Then she thought about her daughter's tears and the word, "Mom." Echoing in the silence, she stood. The court gasped. The Empress did not stand during audiences. The Empress remained on the throne of stars, remote and eternal. What was happening? Kithra descended the steps of her throne, steps that no Empress had walked down in 3,000 years, and the gasps turned to stunned silence. Advisors reached out as if to stop her, then thought better of it. Guards exchanged confused glances. Unsure of their duty, she walked across the chamber, past her daughter, toward the human who stood alone in the golden circle. Her robes trailed behind her like a comet's tail, ancient fabrics that had been worn by rulers since before humans had discovered fire. She stopped before Marcus Cole, and for a long moment, they simply looked at each other up close. She could see the scar on his shoulder, still healing, the wound he had taken for Salith. She could see the lines on his face, the marks of a hard life lived without the advantages her people took for granted. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the uncertainty, the stubborn courage that would not let him look away. "Human," she said. And her voice was different now, quieter, stripped of its formal resonance. "Marcus Cole, my daughter says you saved her life expecting nothing in return. Is this true?" Marcus met her gaze. "I did not do it for a reward, Your Majesty. I did it because she was dying. That was enough. Our peoples are not allies," Kithra said. "We have denied you membership in the Galactic Concord. We have blockaded your worlds, restricted your trade, treated you as lesser beings. You had every reason to let her die." "Maybe," Marcus said. "But that is not who I am. That is not who humans are. We do not decide who to save based on politics or history or what we might get out of it. We see someone in trouble and we help. It is that simple. Nothing is that simple. Kithra said. It should be, Marcus replied. The Empress was silent for a moment, studying this strange creature who spoke to her without fear, who had carried her daughter through the darkness, who bore scars for a people who had never shown him kindness. I have lived 9,000 years, she finally said. I have seen more than you can imagine. I have learned that the universe is cruel and cold and that survival requires caution, requires distance, requires the careful preservation of what matters most. I have built walls around my people because walls keep us safe. She paused, but walls also keep things out. And perhaps we have been keeping out something we needed. She turned to face the court, her voice rising to fill the chamber once more. For 40,000 years, we have looked upon humanity as primitives. We have dismissed their emotions as weakness, their compassion as naivety, their warmth as something to be pitied. But this human has shown us something we had forgotten. She looked back at Marcus. He has shown us what we lost. Somewhere in our long history, we traded our hearts for our traditions. We became so concerned with protocol that we forgot why protocol exists, to protect what matters. And what matters more than kindness? What matters more than the willingness to reach out to strangers in the dark? The chamber was utterly silent. Nobles who had lived for thousands of years were staring at their empress, as if seeing her for the first time. I cannot undo the mistakes of centuries, Kithra continued. I cannot suddenly make our people's friends. There is too much history, too much hurt, too many walls that have been built too high. But I can begin. I can take the first step. She turned back to Marcus and extended her hand palm up. Fingers spread, a gesture of equals that she had learned from studying human diplomatic records. No Velanti ruler had ever offered it to anyone, let alone a human Marcus Cole, she said. You have returned to me something more precious than treasure, more valuable than any gift you could imagine. You have returned my daughter. But more than that, you have returned something to my people that we did not know we had lost. Marcus looked at her hand. He thought about every insult his people had endured, every blockade, every dismissal, every time humanity had been turned away from the Galactic Concord. He thought about how easy it would be to refuse, to throw this gesture back in her face, to take some small revenge for all those years of contempt, but he also thought about Silith, standing nearby with tears still wet on her cheeks. He thought about Jiang showing pictures of his daughters, about Dr. Okonkwo singing spirituals, about Yusuf laughing over chess. He thought about all the times humans had chosen kindness over bitterness, hope over hate. He took her hand. The chamber erupted. Not in anger or celebration, but in something harder to define, a release of tension, a shifting of something ancient and powerful. Nobles were speaking to each other in hushed voices. Advisors were consulting frantically. Guards were standing straighter, uncertain but somehow energized. Perhaps, Empress Kithra said, her hand still clasped in his. It is time we learned what humans truly are. Not from reports and studies and distant observations, but from humans themselves. She looked at her daughter, at the tears and the hope and the fierce love in those silver eyes. Perhaps it is time we learned to feel again in the years that followed. Scholars would argue about that moment. Politicians would claim credit for the treaties that came after. Diplomats would write memoirs about the Great Reconciliation. Historians would debate the causes and consequences of the shift in Velanti policy, but those who were there knew the truth. It started when a human saw someone dying and refused to look away. It continued when a princess found the courage to call her mother Mom. It changed forever when an empress remembered that even 9,000 years of wisdom could not replace a single act of kindness. And, somewhere in the great sweep of galactic history, a small freighter called the Wandering Hope flew on through the stars, battered and patched, and held together by stubbornness, carrying a crew who had no idea they had changed the course of two civilizations. They were too busy laughing over another game of chess, too busy showing each other pictures of home, too busy singing sad songs and dreaming of oceans and thunderstorms, too busy being human. And that, in the end, was exactly enough. The end.